So the hidden history of Japan and its relevance to the economic miracles of the Tokyo Consensus Zone. So let's get to this. So what's this about? Like, what exactly is this article about? So this article is about high growth economies, actually, where they started, how they ended up, their really their fate when the capitalist class took over and all that. So let's start. Japanese colonists in Manchuria created the first economic miracle of the South Manchurian Railway Company, uh, in Japanese known as Mentetsu. I hope I pronounced that right. And they used no-cost investment credit creation. So investment credit creation, what is that? It's credit created at around 25% of GDP. So we'll get to that in a moment. 25% of GDP, credit creation. So it's credit. And as the name implies, it's used for investment. And it comes at no cost as well. It's basically free. So no cost investment in credit creation. And that produces a high growth when it's invested for productive purposes. So in stuff like infrastructure, manufacturing, research and development, all that. So this continue to the article. And it used no-cost investment credit creation to produce high growth and to become the first location of an abundant capital zone in the world. So what does abundant capital mean? Basically, in an investment credit creation economy, so let's say I'll simplify this a bit. So infrastructure. Let's just look at infrastructure. So you have various companies in the infrastructure field. They take on various projects throughout the country, and because there's no limit to the funding that's available, they're gonna get numerous amounts of projects. They're gonna win a lot of they're gonna be winning a lot of what's it called? So there's a thing like called auctions for projects, right? And companies bid on which project. I mean, I call it auctions for projects, but that's not the actual term. Anyway, these companies bid on a project, and the winner gets to take on that project. And there's so many damn projects that every single company will start building up experience over time. They're gonna be flush with cash, and that's what, and they're gonna have so much capital, so much cash on them that they would want to invest it somewhere, and that's what abundant capital zone means. So what does it do? It provides high living standards to the colonists. So this is a colony, so the colonists are the ones who benefit from this, and it also employs local people as well. And this one though, this colony by itself produced about 25% of the total revenues of the Japanese government in the 1930s. So even though, but you're arguing, yeah, but Japan was such an underdeveloped country back then. You're right. It was an underdeveloped country. But the Japanese mainland population was far higher than the population of the colony. Yet the colony produced about 25% of the total revenues of the Japanese government in the 1930s. Isn't that incredible? It is to me. And the research and development done there by the colony in the cultivation and distribution of the soybean placed that product on the diet of the China Sea economies in the rest of the world. So the soybean, so the soybean was not invented there, but they invented some advanced cultivation and distribution processes for the soybean that made it a mainstay let's say that that's what made it a mainstay um, diet for all the East Asian countries. That's how soybean became so common. So moving on, after 1946, many of the repatriated Mentetsu colonists brought back to Japan the high-growth economics they had practiced in that colony and used their understanding of that new economic technology to produce high growth in post-war Japan. So you could consider Mentetsu to be an experimental zone for Japan, really. And then they looked at the results and they were like pleased with that, and then they brought that back to Japan, um, and they practiced it there. So they kept this stuff secret until 1961, when this guy called this economist actually, Osamu Shimomura, I hope I pronounced that right. I think I did. He published his book, Economic Model of Japan, and as usual, the West ignored him. So, yeah, I haven't read that book. I don't even know if you can actually get it, but if you could, I recommend reading that book, and you'll be ahead of me in that aspect. Um, so then the Chinese came, they signed the September 1972 rapprochement with Japan, and they were like, damn, this country is developed. They're like, wow, this Japan, these guys are our neighbors. How do they get so ahead of us? And they asked the Japanese, you gotta share this. Come on, we're related. You gotta share this stuff with us. How did you do this? And they did, and they shared that stuff, and we got the economic miracles of the Tokyo Consensus Zone. Um, so these are all the four major economies that investment credit creation produced. Um, by my definition, major economies means anything above $1 trillion in GDP. So all four of these economies, in terms of GDP PVP, they're above 1 trillion. Uh, and they were all founded upon the transfer of the economic understanding set out by Dr. Asuma Shimomura in 1952 and 1961, and first piloted in Manchuria. So yeah. So regarding South Korea and Taiwan, so in my opinion, um, I don't share this opinion that they were all founded upon the transfer of the economic understanding set out by Osamu Shimomura. I don't think that's the case. I think only with Japan and China, because China downright went to Japan and sought that knowledge. But the other two, I think it was independently developed in those countries. I may be like way wrong. I don't know, but I think that could be the case because we don't have any documents of them. Um, sorry, economies. We don't have any documents of them or any information really of them actually going to Japan to learn from Shimomura about how this works. Uh, we don't even have any documents of them going to Japan. Period. Of them trying to learn from there. So, yeah, this guy actually visited the U.S. in 1937, and then in 1946 provided. So 1937. This is a few years after FDR got elected, and FDR was the first and only president in U.S. history to actually use investment credit creation. So he's actually special in that regard. Um, and he used it in that during that time period until his death in 1945. So yeah, and the Shimura, he understood the key numerical understanding of the capital output ratios in major 1945 U.S. industries. So what's capital output ratios? So basically, it's just the equation. The capital. It's a ratio. Y'all know what a ratio is, right? So it's the capital and the output. So how much capital how much output comes out of the capital that's invested, basically, which was then available to Japan through investment credit creation to produce the economic miracles of the post-war period in the 1960s. So the 1960s are a special, I'd say 1960s and 70s are a special period in the 20th century. They're a special era, I would say. So they kept it a safe secret, as we saw before, from 1945 until 2017, when this dude called Kozo Horiuchi updated his internet article with the help of a Development Bank of Japan committee and produced a book after about a century of the successful first use of investment credit creation economics in the Mentetsu. And after 27, after 72 years from the use of that economic understanding in post-war Japan. Right, so that's a long time after it was used initially. So anyway, the Japanese and the Chinese who have now joined the game cannot hide this economic understanding any more than they can hide the sun. That is factual. So what's the potential of investment credit creation? Let's have a look at that. It can provide a rapid rise in living standards across the world. It can reverse global warming in a short period of time, relatively speaking. It brings in the early introduction of green technologies, and really any ridiculously advanced technology. It's coming in early for us, and the reduction of and end of poverty. So it's excellent at reducing poverty, as we see in China nowadays. So yeah, so that's what that's the hidden history of Japan and the economic miracles that it had an influence on. So yeah, I'll be covering this more of this article later on. For now, I'll end this video at that note. I'll see you guys next time.